Good morning. Let us discuss about 06th June 2015, sorry, 06 July 2015 newspaper. The first important news today is that Greece has rejected or defied Europe, so voting for no towards the austerity measures. Now, this is a vote towards rejection of the austerity. Now, let us see the background. For the last 5 years, Greece is going through a economic depression phase, where its burden, debt burden, has increased manyfold, almost 5 to 6 times its total. The productivity of the economy. So, in this context, the European Union has suggested as austerity measures are decreasing the public expenditure or strong financial management in return for the aid and also the debt which they provide for the Greece government. In this context, in the last election, a leftist government has come into the picture. So, what its major election manifesto is, the austerity in Greece has led to the huge deprivation and suffering. So it wanted to turn out this austerity and revive the economy through the expansion of the expenditure process. So from then onwards, the rift between the European Union as a whole and the Greece got widened. Now in this case, already the Greece has defaulted on its payments to the IMF. Then the leftist government tactically moved it into the public court, where the people has to decide either to go with austerity measures or not. The major thing here is what will be the future of the euro. Now if you observe, Greece is one of the founding members. It means that if the Greece moves out from eurozone, automatically it is going to provide for a cascading effect. And the second thing is, the politically, this is more seen as the strong economies of European, they are trying to control the weaker nations, especially the Greece and other countries. So the question of sovereignty is also involved over here. The third thing is economics, the financial management of the economy. So in this context, a savings-based economy is more important than a consumption-based economy. So austerity itself is a bad thing, especially during the times of depression. So when it has been clear that the austerity will not provide for the economic expansion and opportunities to the Greece people, to what extent European Commission is trying to impose them? So that is one question. So it means the debt already which the Greece has unsustainable, and where the Greece cannot handle them, even not now, even tomorrow it cannot handle them. In this context, the debt waiver can be a better solution to save the European Union rather than going for a stricter violent sanctions onto them, because the austerity is going to further worsen the situation of Greece with rising unemployment as the growth is going to dwindle. So generally, during the depressions, expansionary policies are advocated, but however, contrary to this, European Union went with the contractionary policies, which are been rejected by the Greece now. So let us see the future of the euro as a currency and the European Union as a whole. These are the things we have to understand. Now, growing power politics in the Europe, Germany on one side, Russia on the other side, we have to observe them very closely now. The next thing is malnourishment. So if you have in this article, there are three indices. Let's try to understand them. Weight for age, height for age. So weight for age is less than 2 standard deviations. We call it as wasting. Height for age, when height is less, then it is called as stunting. The stunting reflects the chronic malnutrition, wasting and acute malnutrition. So this year we have got a positive trend, sir. The first thing is, with regard to wasting, it has decreased substantially, and both of them has decreased substantially. But there are few things. Wherever the states have undertaken the market-based reforms, there the relative welfare benefits were very low. For example, if you take Gujarat, the number of malnourished children decreased in proportionate to the growth which it has undertaken, which it has achieved, is relatively lesser. On the other hand, the second important point is the malnourishment is very high among the states which are poor. It means wherever the growth and wealth generation is absent, the indices are much worse. From this I can conclude this way. So the growth is important and redistribution of this growth is also important, which this particular things which try to provide us. Now another thing is, with regards to rapid survey of children, another thing which it talks about is this. Most of the children there are in the rural areas are wasted and stunted compared to the urban areas. The deprivation is greater in the rural areas. And on the other thing, if you the status of the adolescent girls, especially, it is an important indicator for two reasons. It further determines the malnourishment and also health of the children. So the status of the adolescent girls, especially their health and their nutritional status, it will have a cascading effect on the welfare of the children. So in this context, there is no remarkable improvement with regard to the adolescent girls, which is, need a point to be taken for consideration. So further going into these articles, with regard to the humanization, what it has been said is, the Gujarat state did not perform well on the immunization. So the immunization details has to be yet released. With regard to stunting, yes, the Uttar Pradesh is still the highest stunted children. And Jharkhand is with the highest stunted children, wasting with the Uttar Pradesh is still the highest children. And adolescent girl nutrition, India did not perform well with regard to this particular survey. And let's see the statistics. Underweight adolescent girls, the decrease is very much minimal, from 53% to 47% between 10 years. It means that only 6% of development is achieved over this particular period over here. So if you observe, actually it has 46 underweight adolescent girls, 47% in 2004-2005, and it is 53% in 2013-14. It means all the states have failed to reduce the number of underweight adolescent girls. I'm sorry, it is actually worsened over a period of time by 7% points. And the next is underweight children. There is a substantial improvement with regard to the number of underweight and stunted children. Underweight, it is around 12% improvement we can see, and with regard to the stunted children we can see a 10% improvement. So these are the positive things with regard to the nutritional levels. But however, future of the nutrition is determined by the nutritional status of the women, which did not show or which reflects the greater discrimination against the women in Indian society. And the next is, Jaitley talks about deprivation. Recently, the social and socio-economic and caste census, which were the results were out, they show that deprivation is present all across the sections in India. So in this context, the fight against deprivation, Jaitley talks about economic growth and redistribution of wealth. So what it says is, the economic growth, without growth there cannot be redistribution. The first objective is to achieve the higher growth path, and then making the policies and schemes to redistribute the benefits of this higher growth for the benefit of the people. So in this context, how can we bring in this? One is through the formal sector jobs. So the creation of formal sector jobs. But now if you've seen, after the liberalization phase, more and more informalization of the jobs is visible rather than the formalization. And next is, with regard to the land assets, so redistribution of the land to the poor and marginalized, which can have as the productive assets. And creation of the welfare programs, how he can explain the Modi government's cut down on the various welfare programs in the name of financial management has to be seen over here. And especially on the deprivation on rural side, a connectivity is very much important, the infrastructure and connectivity. So how to make the growth redistributive? Try to have these points for the argument. And next, socio-economic and caste census. Now these are being based on 7 important parameters. So what are the, try to understand these 7 important parameters. They are: 1, the households with only one room with no solid walls and roof. So the households with no adult member aged 15 to 59, it means with no earning potential for the family. And female headed households with no adult male aged between 15 to 59. And those who are differently abled, and no able-bodied member. It means physically handicapped, etc. Scheduled caste, scheduled tribe households. Those with no literate member above the age of 25 who can be a potential earning member for the family. So these are the and next one is landless households, and those are who are dependent on manual labor. So these are the 7 factors on which the status have come up. Now if you further go into that, this particular article also talks about different patterns of consumption and different the status of the percentages of the people who are actually deprived. Now what exactly it says is this. The first thing is, the caste factor was not yet taken into consideration, or the caste factor though taken into consideration, the results were not yet released. And the rural poverty is very high, rural deprivation is very high compared to the higher, that is urban deprivation. And in this process, in India, the caste has never been a proxy for the class or deprivation. It means that there is, if you take scheduled castes or scheduled tribes, they are worse deprived when compared to the other people. So, it means the class deprivation and caste deprivation, they cannot be exchanged altogether in Indian setting, which is a very good takeover point over here. So, it shows that the deprivation at various levels, which can be an important planning tool. So, we can use this for particular understanding of the things. Now, it's a very good article on good governance. Now, the first thing is, what is good governance is? So, especially after the study in the Africa, the good governance has come into existence. Initially, good governance has only the economic overtones. Later, it was also converted into political overtones. If you see the initial definition of the good governance, it according to this, it has to be exercise of political power in the management of the nation's affairs. Now, exercise of the political power, it means that what initially it wanted to have is shifting the management practices away from the state towards the market. Later, it has expanded its definition to include the democracy and democratic form of the government as an important aspect of the good governance too. It means first it talked about only the economic overtones, later it has shifted towards the political overtones. Then what is the bad governance which it is defining as? Anything which is undertaken by the state, expansion of the state, proactive expansion of the state is considered as a bad government over here. So, and final thing is, the corruption is being very narrowly interpreted under the good governance as something of a bribe. The corruption and bribe are not one and the same. The corruption can be seen as a broad as the form of the government or economic system that is providing for an opportunity for few classes taking over the control over the entire economy. Or on a narrow scale, it can be seen as a bribe seeking and a bribe taking. So in this good governance, corruption is very narrowly interpreted as a bribe. So a bad governance automatically comes from the state-led growth process. The reason being, more the state involvement, more will raise the corruption or bribe. That's what is being discussed by the article. And the next is the definitions of the so-called as accountability, transparency, empowerment, participation. All these things are being differently talked over here. So that is what is called definition of empowerment. It is, very poorly reflected over here. What it has said is empowerment of the people as consumers who can have the market access, rather than empowerment of the people towards politicization and rapid mass participation. And the next is, with regard to the transparency, it is transparency of the Indian sector to compete with the private sector. Understand? Competency to help the multinational corporations to provide access to the Indian markets. And accountability towards ends or achievement of the results. Accountability does not mean accountability to the people. So accountability is shifted totally towards the results. To what extent the environment favorable towards the business and investors is facilitated. And citizenship is also narrowly interpreted. Normally the citizenship is all about the rights. Now the citizenship is converted into something called as consumership under the good governance. And participation has been deprived, has been talked about, the participation as a consumer in the market process rather than participation in the civic life, in the rights movements as a whole. So that is the reason why what the article argues is the good governance is a reductionist concept rather than providing for the expansion of the rights of the citizens. In this, it is citizenship without rights and democracy without politics. These are the twin pillars of the good governance. So the democracy is replaced with the management, the citizenship is replaced with consumership. And the next article is related to the Madrasa reform. So recently, Maharashtra government, it wanted to standardize the total educational system. In the process. Even the religious institutions has to offer certain standard subjects, which is a positive step in its whole. But however, this process, how it is being undertaken, that is what is under question over here. So better the government would have taken the persuasion mode, incentivization mode, rather than the implementation of this through force. So it could have involved with the stakeholders and also the Ministry of Minority Affairs in this process of reform, because the objective is good, but how to achieve this objective is also important in democracy. And question of justice. Now if you see, with regard to the Deep Horizon accident recently, the British Petroleum has agreed to pay $18.7 billion as a compensation with the final settlement in the United States. Now if you see the Bhopal gas tragedy and compared to this, the failure of Indian state to arrest this particular accused and also to gain the compensation for them to the poor and underprivileged is clearly visible. So especially when the weak state or institutions of the state are not strong. And the second thing is, when countries depend upon the resources which are coming from the West, automatically the voice or the tenor of the tone of the government is decreasing. So in this context, the bringing down the Dow Chemical, which has taken over this particular the Anderson Union Carbide Corporation, so it has to be brought to the justice, and the people who have to be compensated properly. And if you can see, as per the compensation which was received, the government has taken over the greater responsibility, and even in the existing situation, only 35,000 rupees on average comes to a victim over here, which is a very minimal or menial. And next, with regard to President versus Parliamentary form of government, in the Shankar Krishna article it talks about. Now, in India, due to instability of the governments many times, it has been spoken that India has to shift towards the presidential form of government. But however, if you observe, the functioning of a president is much complicated than compared to the Indian parliamentary system. So the powers are being separated into watertight compartments in United States. And also the checks and balances are very strong, which makes the functioning of the office of the President of United States of America is very difficult. So these are clearly seen. If you see now, the bipartisanship, it is nowhere possible in America now, as this particular Republican Party is shifting more and more rights. And the separation of powers are so strong, the government cannot override the functioning of the legislature and judiciary, and president cannot override simply their functioning. And this can be visible in the passage of the three things, that is Obamacare and Trans-Pacific Agreement. And added to that, the United States Constitution, it was built on the federal strong federation, which is favorable towards the states. So taking the states along with regard to the various initiatives of the president is another challenge. And the American capitalism functions in such a way that every action and decision of the government has to be mediated through the private business entities. For example, if you talk about Obamacare, the government will subsidize the people and people has to buy them buy the insurance plans through the exchanges which will be provided by the private people. It means the government will not directly provide the health benefits. They will be delivered by the private people, and the government can subsidize the contributions of the people towards this insurance premiums. And if you can see federation, though the Affordable Care Act, which is also called as Obamacare, passed by the parliament, it did not provide for an opportunity, or it did not come into effect in 22 of the states. The reason being the state governments which are ruled by the Republicans did not take it forward. So it means the federation, the states becomes more important than the will of the president over there. And even the Trans-Pacific Agreement, so there are many problems towards this, especially the protection of the jobs in the United States of America. So that is the reason why certain president cannot take forward his will totally. So these are the things which we need to understand. And if possible, go through the President Obama's speech recently with regard to the South Carolina killings in the church. Try to watch that speech. It has got a very good meaning even for a country such as India. Try to go through that. So thank you very much. So today I wanted to start at 4:30 in the morning to complete this articles. So that's why I might be a bit fast, but however the system gets improved over a period of time. And all the best for the future rankers, and congratulations to these people who got selected this year. And above all this, the people who lost this examination this year, don't lose your heart. There is always tomorrow, and try to better perform tomorrow. And again, all the best for you all guys. Thank you very much.